There is a form for this. That was my first thought. Not a feeling, a thought, and it arrived in complete sentences, the way things do when you have spent 31 years inside a federal agency. A man sat across a desk from me in an office on Silham Road and showed me a document with my signature on it that I had never seen, and what went through my head, in order, was, this will require a form, there will be a process, the process will have a name and a number and a time frame, and at the end of that process, this will be corrected. I want you to understand that I did not think that because I am stupid. I thought it because for 31 years it had been true. I worked for the Social Security Administration, Regional Office, Baltimore, from 1979 to 2013. Claims, then claims supervision, then program administration. I processed disability determinations. I ran a unit that handled representative payee appointments, which, if you don't know what that is the arrangement where a beneficiary who can't manage their own money has someone appointed to receive it on their behalf. I spent 11 years of my working life on the specific question of what happens when one person is given control of another person's benefit payments. 11 years, on that exact question. I'm 75 years old. I live in a studio apartment in Glen Burnie, Maryland, that I rent for $1,140 a month. I have $460,000 less than I had in March 2023, and no realistic prospect of ever replacing any of it. And the reason I am telling you this is not that I think it will help me. It won't. Nothing helps me. I want to be honest about that at the beginning, rather than pretend otherwise at the end. But there are men watching this who are about to sign something, and one of them might not. Marjorie died on the 4th of March 2019, 44 years. Congestive heart failure, and it took 2 years, and I was her caregiver for most of it because that's what you do. I retired in 2013 at 62. She retired the same year from the county school system. We had 11 months of what we'd planned for. One trip, to Nova Scotia, and then the diagnosis, and then everything after that was hospitals and calendars and a chair I slept in. I'm not going to describe the 2 years after she died. I'll say only that I did not manage them well, that my daughter Carol will tell you the same thing, and that a man who has spent his entire adult life as one half of something does not simply carry on as one half of nothing. The finances, since they matter, my first annuity and Social Security together came to about $4,480 a month. That's the income. Separately, I had a thrift savings plan balance that I rolled over, $312,000, and I sold the house in Glen Burnie in 2022, and after the mortgage payoff, that was another $460,000 in capital, plus the monthly. That is not a fortune. I want to be clear about that because I have seen the comments people leave on stories like this, and they seem to imagine wealthy men. I was a GS-13 civil servant who saved consistently for 31 years and paid off a house. That's all. $460,000 is what careful ordinary people have at 72, and it was supposed to be the difference between a manageable old age and a frightening one. Thailand came from Gary, who I'd known since the 80s, agency softball, retired to Hua Hin in 2017, and never stopped emailing about it. I went in November 2022 for 3 weeks, and I stayed 5. I liked Bangkok. I liked it in a way that surprised me, and that I'd defend to anyone. Sathorn, where I ended up, that's the business district end, embassies and office towers, and a sky train station, not what you're picturing. I liked that the city worked, the trains ran, the hospitals were extraordinary. I went to Bumrungrad for a routine cardiology follow-up and got a same-day appointment, a full workup, and a printed report for less than my Medicare Advantage copay. And I sat in that waiting room, thinking about the 11 weeks Marjorie had waited for a cardiology referral in 2017. I moved in March 2023, 72 years old, non-immigrant OA retirement visa, arranged through the consulate in Chicago before departure, with the 800,000 baht deposit in a Thai bank account, in my own name, which I maintained continuously, and which is the only element of this entire account that was never compromised. I met Apina in June 2023. Everyone calls her Ni. She was 34. She was a paralegal at a law firm in Sathorn, a real firm, in a real tower, with a real practice in commercial and property work, and she had been there 6 years. We met because I had a genuine legal question. I wanted to know what happened to my Thai bank account, my lease, and my remains if I died in Thailand, which is a question that a 72-year-old widower, alone in a foreign country, thinks about more than you might imagine. I went to the firm on a walk-in basis, and I was given 40 minutes with a paralegal because that is an appropriate level of resource for that question. She answered it properly. She explained Thai succession law, why I needed a Thai will covering Thai assets separately from my American will, what the AMFOR would require, and what my daughter would face if I did nothing. Then she said something I have thought about approximately 4,000 times since. She said, "Most foreigners come here and never do this until it is too late." At the time I heard, this is a person who takes people's affairs seriously. I want to be careful and accurate about the next 14 months, because I have been asked to be, by 2 lawyers and 1 federal investigator, and because accuracy is the only thing I have left that I'm any good at. I was not seduced. I was recruited, and I was recruited slowly, and the recruitment consisted almost entirely of being taken seriously. Do you know what it is to be 72 and alone, and have somebody ask you a follow-up question? Not a polite question, a follow-up, something that requires them to have listened to the first answer. Carol loves me. I want that in the record. My daughter loves me, and calls me every Sunday, and has never once in 6 years asked me a follow-up question, because she is 51, and has 2 teenagers and a job and a mortgage, and because her mother's death took something out of both of us that we have never discussed. Nabe asked follow-up questions for 14 months. We married on the 9th of February 2024 at the district office in Bangkok, which is the AMFOR every foreigner uses, because of the Valentine's business, and because they are efficient with the paperwork. It took an afternoon and required an affirmation of freedom to marry from the U.S. Embassy, notarized, which I obtained in person on the 22nd of January. I did not tell Carol until afterwards. That was cowardice, and I've apologized for it. There was no sin sod, because Nee's family did not ask for one, and I mention that because it is one of about 6 things in this story that made me feel the whole arrangement was more legitimate than the ones you read about. Her mother was a retired school administrator in Nonthaburi. Her father had been a mid-level civil servant at a ministry. They were, in the most precise sense, people like me. That mattered enormously, and I want to explain why. I had read the warnings. I am not a man who arrived in Thailand having read nothing. I spent 31 years in an agency where reading the material is the job. I knew about land ownership. I knew about bar relationships and village families and the entire architecture of the cautionary tale. And every single one of those warnings described a situation structurally unlike mine. Nee had a professional salary. She had no debts that anybody ever mentioned. Her family asked me for nothing, ever, not once in 2.5 years. She was not from a poor village. She worked in a law firm in a tower with a marble lobby. I had a checklist in my head, built out of everything I'd read, and I ran it, and it came back clean. Which is exactly what a checklist does when the thing in front of you is not the thing the checklist was written for. The power of attorney was executed on the 14th of June 2024. Here is how it came to exist, and I need to go slowly, because this is the part that matters. I was going into hospital. Nothing dramatic. An elective procedure, a hernia repair, with an overnight stay, scheduled for late June. And in the run-up to it, Nee raised, entirely sensibly, the question of what would happen if something went wrong. Not death. I had the will by then. Incapacity. If I were unconscious for a week, who could deal with the landlord, the bank, immigration, the hospital's own billing office? That is a real question. That is a question every single person over 70 living alone in a foreign country should have an answer to. And if you take nothing else from this, you do need somebody who can act for you. That part was correct. We went to her firm. Not a back office, her firm, the one in the tower. A partner handled it. There were 2 other members of staff present. There was a notarial services attorney involved, which in Thailand means a lawyer, specifically licensed by the Lawyers' Council, to perform notarial acts, and that is a real credential, and it was a real one. The document was in Thai. I was given an English translation. 1 page, typed, on the firm's letterhead. It described a power of attorney for the purposes of medical decisions, immigration matters, dealings with the landlord, and, the phrase I remember exactly, routine banking administration during any period of incapacity. I read the English page. I asked 3 questions. The answers were reasonable. I signed the Thai document. I did not have that Thai document independently translated. Not by a translator I hired. Not by anybody. The English page I was reading had been produced by the firm that was also employing the person the document appointed, and I did not perceive that as a problem, because in my entire professional life, the notion that a document might not say what the accompanying summary said was, and I mean this literally, not a category of thought I possessed. At SSA, if a form said something, it said it. The Spanish version said what the English version said. That was not a matter of trust. That was a matter of the entire apparatus existing to make it so. I signed a document in a language I cannot read, on the strength of a summary provided by an interested party, and I did it in a marble lobby with a notarial attorney present, which made me feel more protected rather than less. The procedure went fine, incidentally. I was in overnight. I was home in 3 days. Let me give you the shape of those 14 months, because otherwise you're going to picture something lurid and it wasn't. We had a routine. Tuesday evenings we went to a place on Soa Suan Plu that did northern food, and she ordered for both of us, because my Thai never got past the shape of a sentence. Sunday mornings we went to Lumpini Park at 6:30, which is when Bangkok is bearable, and walked the loop twice, and she did not talk for the first lap, because she said mornings were for not talking, which suited me perfectly. She got me a cardiologist, a proper one, at Bumrungrad, and she came to the first 3 appointments and took notes in a notebook and asked the man questions I would not have known to ask. She learned what an ejection fraction is. She reorganized my medication into one of those weekly boxes because she noticed I was taking the beta blocker at inconsistent times. I am aware of how that sounds now. I am aware that a person building a position would do exactly those things. I am also aware, and I have had a year to sit with this, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise for the sake of a tidier story, that I don't believe every hour of it was performance. I think a person can be running a fraud on a Tuesday and mean it on the Sunday. I think that's probably worse rather than better, and I have not worked out how to hold both, and my counselor says that not working it out may be where I live now. She never asked me for money, not once, in 2.5 years, not for her mother, not for a business, not for a phone. Every dollar that left me, I moved myself, or signed for myself, and I want that stated plainly because it was the single most persuasive fact in my possession at the time, and it is the thing I would say to any man who is running the same checklist I was. She didn't need to ask. That was the entire design. Asking is what you do when you don't have authority. She had authority from the 14th of June 2024, and asking would only have created a record. The absence of requests is not evidence of anything. I had it filed as my strongest data point, and it was the shape of the hole where the fraud was. Now the 14 months, and I'm going to give you the things I noticed, because I noticed a great many, and did nothing with any of them. In July 2024, my American bank statements stopped arriving by post. I had them on paper. I am 75. I like paper. Forwarded to the Bangkok address. They stopped, and I logged in online, and everything looked correct, and I concluded that international mail forwarding had failed, which it does constantly, and I did nothing. In August 2024, the phone number attached to my American accounts was changed. I know this now. At the time, what I experienced was that I stopped receiving verification codes on my US number, and Nee set up something on my phone that she described as fixing the international SMS problem, which was a genuine problem I had been complaining about for months. In September 2024, I noticed that a transfer I expected to land in my Thai account was 2 days late. I asked. She said the bank had introduced additional verification for foreign transfers, which was plausible, and which was in fact true of one bank that year, and I accepted it. In November 2024, there was a condominium, 4.9 million baht, in Sathorn, in her name. Necessarily in her name for the land-adjacent structure of the deal, as it was explained to me, although I have since learned that a foreigner can own a condominium unit outright in his own name within the building's foreign quota, and that there was no reason on God's earth for that unit to be in her name. That was $140,000. I signed the transfer instruction myself. I was not defrauded of that. I gave it away, and I gave it away because I did not know a rule that I could have learned in 9 minutes on the internet. In January 2025, there was an escrow, a land purchase in Chonburi, a family arrangement, funds to be held by a firm pending completion, $95,000. There was documentation. The documentation was in Thai, and in February 2025, Gary said something to me on the telephone that I have replayed until it has no edges left. He said, "Ron, who can move your money?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "If you had a stroke tomorrow, whose name is on the paperwork that lets somebody move your money? Do you know? Have you read it?" And I said, and this is verbatim, I've written it down. I said, "It's a limited power of attorney, Gary. It's for medical and administrative purposes." He said, "Have you read it?" And I said, "I've read the translation." There was a pause on that line that I did not understand at the time, and that I understand completely now. He was 74 years old, and 3,000 miles away, and he had just heard the whole thing, and he could not think of a way to say it that wouldn't cost him a friend. He said, "Get it looked at, mate." 2 months. It took me 2 months to do it, and the reason I finally did was not suspicion. It was that I wanted to add my daughter to it. Carol was coming in June 2025 with the grandchildren, and I had it in my head that while she was there we would put her name on things, as a second attorney, a backup, the way you do. Belt and braces. I had spent 11 years administering representative payee arrangements, and the one thing I had learned is that a single appointee, with no oversight, is the highest risk structure that exists. I knew that. I taught that. I ran training on that. I wanted a second name on the document because I believed in redundancy. And so on the 11th of April 2025, I took the Thai power of attorney to an independent lawyer named Anucha, in an office on Salem, recommended by an American acquaintance and unconnected to Nee's firm in any way, to have it amended. I gave him the Thai document and the English page. He read the Thai document first. It took him about 90 seconds. Then he read the English page. That took about 20. Then he read the Thai document again, and he put both pages down side by side and squared them up, and he looked at me, and he said, "Mr. Ronald, where did you get this English page?" I have had, in 75 years, 3 moments where the ground moved. Marjorie's diagnosis, the phone call about my brother in 1994, and a man in an office on Sillam Road squaring up 2 pieces of paper. The Thai document was a general power of attorney, not limited, not medical, not conditional on incapacity. It contained no incapacity trigger of any kind. It was operative from the date of signature, and it granted broad authority over financial affairs, property and accounts, without restriction and without any requirement to account to me for anything. The English page did not correspond to it. It was not a mistranslation. It was a different document, describing a document that did not exist, on the letterhead of the firm that had produced the one I signed. And there was a second thing, which is what Anucha found when he went further, and which took another 6 weeks and 4 separate document requests to establish. There were signatures on financial instructions, American ones, that were not mine. I know my own signature. I signed 250,000 forms in 31 years. What I was eventually shown, when the U.S. side of this finally produced its records, were instructions changing the destination of my monthly federal annuity and Social Security payments, and authorizing movements from the rollover account, bearing a signature that was a good imitation and was not mine. 9 months of my monthly income had been going somewhere else. 9 months. $4,480 a month. $40,320. And the reason I had not noticed is that Nee handled the Thai household account, and I was drawing from Thai baht for everything, and had not looked at a U.S. statement since they stopped arriving in July 2024. The rollover account had been emptied in 4 movements between October 2024 and February 2025. $217,000, plus the condominium at $140, plus the Chonburi escrow at $95, which never existed, and where there was no land, and no seller, and no completion. $452,000, and the $8,000 remaining in the rollover, and the $40,000 of diverted monthly payments. I did not confront her. I want to explain that, because people find it strange. Anucha told me not to, and Anucha was right, and it was the single piece of good advice I received in 3 years. He said, if you speak to her, everything that can be moved will move by tomorrow morning, and everything that can be destroyed will be destroyed. Say nothing. Come back Thursday. So I went home on the 11th of April, 2025, and I ate dinner with my wife, and I talked about her mother's knee, and I went to bed in the same bed, and I did that for 11 days, while a lawyer assembled a file. I am 75 years old, and I do not know how I did that. I have thought about it, and I genuinely do not know. I can tell you what it was like, in fragments, which is how I have it. The first night I could not eat, and said it was the heat, and she put her hand on my forehead to check for fever, and I let her. The third night she asked me what was wrong, twice, and I said I was thinking about Marjorie's birthday, which was in April, and which was true, and which I used as a shield, and she was kind about it, and did not push, and I lay awake afterwards, feeling something I can only describe as contaminated. On the 6th day I went to a copy shop on Sathorn Soi 1, and photographed every document in the apartment. Bank books, the lease, the will, the marriage certificate, the hospital paperwork, everything. And I did it between 9:30 and 11:30 in the morning while she was at the office. And I stood at a machine in a shopping arcade at 74 years of age, documenting my own marriage as evidence. On the 9th day she cooked. It was a Sunday. She made the thing with the pork and the holy basil that I liked and cannot pronounce. And we ate it on the balcony, and she talked about a case at the firm, and I sat there knowing what was in a folder in Anucha's office, and I laughed at the right places. I did that, not her. That's the part I can't get past. For 11 days I was the one running a deception, and I found out that I could, and I have not been able to think about it since without something turning over. The complaint was filed on the 22nd of April 2025. She was interviewed. She retained counsel immediately, which any paralegal would. She has never been charged, and I do not expect her to be, and I want to be honest about why. Because it is not corruption, and it is not incompetence. She signed nothing. That is the whole of it. The Thai power of attorney was signed by me. The English page bore no signature and no author. The financial instructions bearing the forged signature were transmitted electronically from a device that cannot be tied to any individual hand, and the accounts that received the money were closed and their balances distributed before I ever walked into Anucha's office. The condominium was in her name lawfully and sold lawfully. The one act in the entire sequence that a court could examine on paper and attribute to a specific human being was mine. Anucha explained it to me in a way I have never forgotten. He said, "The structure is not designed to steal from you. It is designed so that when it is examined afterwards, the only person who can be shown to have done anything is you." She and I were divorced by mutual consent in September 2025. There was nothing to divide. I saw her once more, at the Ampher, across a corridor, and she did not look at me, and I did not want her to. Telling Carol was worse than the office on Siloam Road, and I want to include it because it is the thing nobody mentions. I told her on the 12th of June, 2025, on a video call, at 9 in the evening her time. I had rehearsed it. I had a page of notes, which tells you everything about me, and about 40 seconds in she stopped me and said, "Dad, are you safe? Do you have somewhere to sleep?" And I realized she thought I was homeless, and I had to spend 10 minutes reassuring her before I could continue, and by then, I had lost the shape of it entirely. She was not angry with me. I had braced for anger and prepared for it, and I would have preferred it. What happened instead was that she became my parent in the space of about 4 minutes. Practical, gentle, organizing, and I heard her doing it and I could not stop her. and my daughter has been my parent ever since. She flew out in July as planned, with the grandchildren, and it was not the trip any of us had booked. She sat with me at Anucha's office. She made a list. She found the apartment in Glen Burnie. She has never once said the thing she could say. Not in 14 months. I would rather she said it. Now, the title of this. Let me deal with it properly, because it's the part everybody wants, and it's the part that gets told wrong. The Thai courts did not fail me because I am a foreigner. I want to say that as clearly as I can, because I have read a great deal of very ugly material online in the last year, written by men who arrived at a different conclusion, and it is both wrong and unfair. Here is what actually happened. Forgery is a criminal offense in Thailand. Using a forged document is a criminal offense. Fraud is a criminal offense. Misuse of a power of attorney is actionable. The complaint was accepted. It was investigated. It was not brushed aside, and nobody asked me for anything improper at any stage. The problems were the problems that would have arisen in Baltimore. Proof. I signed the Thai document. My signature on it is genuine, because I genuinely signed it. My case is not that I didn't sign. My case is that I was told it said something else, and the person who told me that was speaking, and speech leaves no record. The English page was unsigned and unattributed, and could not be tied evidentially to any individual. The partner who supervised the signing left the firm in November 2024, and is, I am told, in Singapore. Dissipation. The money was gone, not hidden, gone, spent, moved, converted, distributed. The condominium was sold in March 2025, 6 weeks before I walked into Anucha's office. There was no asset sitting somewhere with my name attachable to it. And time. A Thai criminal proceeding of this kind runs years. A civil action alongside it runs years. I was told, honestly, and without any attempt to keep me on the meter, that I was looking at 3 to 5 years, 1.5 to 3 million baht in costs, and a realistic recovery, in the best case, of a fraction of what was demonstrably traceable. I asked what fraction. He said he could not responsibly give me a number. I asked him to guess. He said, perhaps 10%, perhaps nothing, and I am telling you this because you are 75 and you should hear it from me rather than in year 4. That is not a failure of Thai justice. That is what it looks like anywhere on earth when you try to get money back out of a person who has already spent it. Ask anyone in America who has won a judgment. A judgment is a piece of paper that says you are owed money by someone who does not have it. The Thai courts could do nothing. That's true. It is also true of every court there has ever been. The American side is a different story, and it is the only part of this with any light in it, and I include it because there is a man watching this who needs to know it is worth doing. I went to the U.S. Embassy on Wireless Road on the 29th of April 2025. American Citizen Services. I had a folder. The officer I saw was a woman in her 30s who had, I would estimate, had this conversation before, and who did not once make me feel like a fool. She could not help me directly. The embassy does not investigate and does not recover funds, and she said so immediately. What she did was tell me exactly which doors existed and give me the referral information for each, and I want to name them because nobody ever does. Federal benefit fraud, the diversion of Social Security payments, is a matter for the Social Security Administration's Office of the Inspector General, which has a fraud reporting mechanism and takes it extremely seriously, because a redirected benefit payment is a federal offense and not a domestic dispute. The civil service annuity side is a matter for the Office of Personnel Management, which has its own Inspector General. The unauthorized movements from the rollover account were a matter for the custodian's fraud department and for the Federal Trade Commission's identity theft reporting system, and I filed with all of them. I want to be honest about how it went, because the system worked is too clean. It was 9 months of unrelenting, exhausting, humiliating paperwork. I was required to prove things about myself that I found degrading to have to prove. I made statements. I provided handwriting exemplars. I was interviewed twice by telephone at hours that suited Washington and not Bangkok. On 2 occasions I was asked questions whose plain implication was that I might have arranged the diversions myself and changed my mind, which is a completely legitimate line of inquiry that I would have pursued myself in 1996, and which sat on me like a stone for weeks. But it worked. The monthly payments were restored to me in January 2026. The direct deposit was corrected, the account was locked, and a substantial portion of the diverted payments, not all of it, but most, was ultimately made good, because a federal benefit paid to the wrong destination on a forged instruction is a matter the federal government regards as its own problem and not solely mine. The $452,000 of capital is gone. That was private money in private accounts, and no agency on earth is going to reach across a border and get it back for me. But the $4,480 a month is mine again, for as long as I live, index adjusted, and I would not have that if I had not walked into a building on Wireless Road with a folder. So report it. Report it to every one of them, in writing, immediately, and keep going when it is humiliating. The private money is probably gone. The government money is not the same category of thing, and it is worth every one of those 9 months. I did not bring the civil action. I want to explain that decision properly, because I have been judged for it by people who were not in the room, and because the arithmetic of it is something a lot of men watching this will one day have to do. Anucha laid it out on a single page, which I appreciated. 3 to 5 years, 1.5 to 3 million baht in costs, which is $40,000 to $80,000, payable as it went rather than at the end. A realistic recovery in the best case of perhaps 10% of what was traceable, and traceable was considerably less than 452,000, because most of it wasn't. Then the line that actually decided it, which he did not write down. He said, "Mr. Ronald, you would be 78 or 80 at judgment. You would spend those years on this. Not thinking about it, on it. Statements, hearings, translations, travel. I have clients who have won, and I am not certain all of them are glad. I sat with that for 2 weeks, and then I did the thing I had done for 31 years, which is that I made a table. Column 1, expected recovery, probability weighted, honestly assessed, somewhere between nothing and $40,000. Column 2, cost, near certain, 40 to 80,000, payable out of an income of 4,480 a month, in a country I would have had to keep living in to pursue it. Column 3, time, 3 to 5 years, out of a remaining life expectancy that the tables put, for a 75-year-old American male with a cardiac history, at about 9. 3 to 5 out of 9, spent on this. That is not a legal decision. That is a mortality calculation, and it is the most brutal piece of arithmetic I have ever done, and I did it on a legal pad, because a legal pad is what I have always used. I understand entirely why a 50-year-old would sue. At 50, the sums run the other way, and I would have fought her to the last baht, and probably enjoyed parts of it. At 75, pursuing it would have cost me the only asset I have left that cannot be replaced, in order to chase one that already couldn't be. So I let it go. Letting it go is not peace, and anyone who tells you acceptance arrives is describing something that has not visited this apartment. What arrives is a decision. Then you make it again the next morning, and then again. One more thing before the useful part. About 6 weeks after I got back, I did something I have not told Carol about. I worked the whole thing up as a case file. Chronology, exhibits, findings, in the format I'd have used for a determination in 1998. 41 pages. It's in a box file under the bed. What that exercise established, at the end, in my own handwriting, is that there were 4 separate points at which a man with my exact training could have stopped this with one question, and that at each of the 4, I did not ask it, and the reason was the same reason every time. I did not want to be the kind of man who checks. 31 years I administered a system built on the premise that people must be checked. Not because they are wicked, because systems without verification fail, always, everywhere, regardless of the character of the individuals inside them. I believed that professionally, without reservation, and I applied it to 200,000 strangers, and at 72, in a marble lobby, I decided that applying it to my own life would make me small. Now the practical part. 4 things, and I have thought very hard about which 4. 1. Never sign a document in a language you cannot read on the basis of a translation supplied by the other side. Never. Not from a law firm, not with a notarial attorney present, not in a marble lobby. If you need a Thai document, hire your own translator, a certified one, independent, whom you found and you paid, and have them read the actual Thai text to you and confirm in writing what it says. It costs a few thousand baht. I did not spend a few thousand baht, and it cost me $452,000. 2. A power of attorney should be specific, limited, and conditional. You probably do need one. I meant it earlier. A person over 70 living alone abroad needs somebody who can act. But it should name the exact acts permitted, exclude everything else expressly, be triggered by a defined event rather than operative on signature, and carry an end date. A general power of attorney is not a stronger version of a limited one. It is a different instrument, and what it does is transfer your legal personality to another human being, and appoint two people, not one, with a requirement that they act jointly. I administered that principle for 11 years. Single appointee, no oversight, no accounting requirement. That is the highest risk structure in the entire field, and I built it for myself in a marble lobby in Sathorn. 3. Keep the machinery of your home country money in your home country and in your own hands. Your registered address, your telephone number for verification codes, your statement delivery. The moment your American verification codes go to a phone you don't control, every account behind them belongs to whoever holds it. I let that happen in August 2024 in the course of solving a real and annoying problem, and it was the load-bearing failure, more than the power of attorney. 4. Read one statement a month. 1. From your home country accounts. Not the balance in the app, the statement, the whole thing, the transactions. I stopped in July 2024 because the paper stopped and I let a small inconvenience become a habit, and 9 months of my income went somewhere else while I ate dinner every night with the person receiving it. And a 5th, which isn't a control, it's a warning about a specific kind of man. If your working life was spent inside an institution, a government agency, a bank, a hospital, the military, a school system, you have a particular vulnerability, and nobody has ever told you about it. You have 30 or 40 years of training in a world where documents are true, where the form says what it says, where the translated version matches the original because an entire apparatus exists to make it match, and where if something goes wrong, there is a process with a number and a time frame, and somebody whose job it is to fix it. That training is not knowledge. It is a set of assumptions so deep you cannot see them, because they were correct every single day for 4 decades. And you carry them out of the building on the day you retire, and you take them abroad with you, and they are the exact assumptions that a competent fraud is built to use. I was not naive. I want to be precise about this because naive is what people say, and it is the wrong word. I was institutionalized. I had been trained by 31 years of reliable systems to believe that paper is trustworthy, and I met a situation where it wasn't, and I had no reflex for it at all. If that is your background, then the thing that made you good at your job is the thing that will get you. Know that before you sign anything. That is everything I know. Now I'm going to tell you the true part, and then I'll stop. People say you can rebuild. I have heard it from Carol and from Gary, and from a very kind counselor at a practice in Baltimore that takes Medicare, and every one of them meant it, and every one of them was being kind. It isn't true. Not at 75. The money is not the thing I lost. I have $4,480 a month, and a studio apartment in Medicare, and I will not starve, and I know exactly what that is worth, because I spent 31 years processing claims for people who had considerably less. What I lost is the other thing. When you're 40 and you lose everything, you have 30 years to fix it, and 30 years is enough for almost anything. When you're 55, you have 20. At 75, the arithmetic simply stops. There is no plan I can make on any timescale I actually possess. Every version of my future that had any room in it required that capital, and there is no second version, and I have looked. That's the despair. It isn't dramatic, it's arithmetic, and it's in the room every morning at about 5:15. I see Carol every fortnight. The grandchildren are 15 and 17, and they are patient with me. I volunteer 2 mornings a week at a senior center in Sathorn Park, helping people with their benefit paperwork, which the counselor thinks is significant, and which I think is simply the only thing I know how to do. I'm all right in the mornings, most mornings, and I still think about the form. That's the thing that hasn't left. I sat in that office on Salem Road with 2 pieces of paper in front of me that did not match, and my entire trained mind reached automatically for the process. The number, the time frame, the appeal, the reconsideration, the administrative law judge, the whole apparatus that I served for 31 years and believed in absolutely and would still tell you is one of the better things human beings have built. And there wasn't one. Not for this. Not for a man who signed his name to something he couldn't read. There is a form for almost everything. That was the true part of my whole working life, and it remains true, and it is not enough, and nobody ever told me where it stopped.